One of our favorite times of the week here at the Voice of College Football, getting the wager breakdown from Steve Merrill from Wager Talk each and every week concerning all the biggest games across college football. Head on over to patreon.com/MarkRogersTV or as a premium member right here on the main YouTube channel for Steve's Under the Radar selection. Steve, this was an unexpected showdown. No one saw this one coming. Ohio State, when you say Ohio State 9-1, that's pretty much every year. But when you say Indiana 10-0, that's a first statement that we could ever make that in the history of college football. Well, the Buckeyes are still considered to be the much better team as a 10.5-point favorite at home.
Yeah, and we're doing this on Friday afternoon. That line is 10.5. You know, just yesterday it was 12. In fact, on Wednesday it was 13. 13.5 is where it peaked on Wednesday. Came back down to 12 on Thursday. And as we head closer to the weekend, it's 10.5. So we'll see if it hits that key number of 10. I didn't think it would, but it's looking like it might. I do think Indiana's a public dog, but I also think that's some sharp money. Might be some injury money, too, with the offensive line situation. I think it's an overreaction. My 10,000 game simulation favors Ohio State by 16.5, so I do think there's line value with the Buckeyes at this current number. Obviously, tough to find a look ahead. The big game lines, most sportsbooks didn't put one up on this one back in June. Also, Indiana, huge step up in class. They've obviously been favored in every game this season, but they've been a substantial favorite in every one of those games. In fact, if you look, I don't think they've played a bowl-eligible team yet. None of their teams that they've played, let me rephrase that, none of the teams they've played, I believe, are bowl-eligible yet. So this is beyond a step up in class. That almost would be an understatement here. And I do think it matters. If this game was at Indiana, then maybe they could hang, take a little bit of the pressure off. But when you're playing on the road in a hostile environment and when things start to go bad, which I think they will at some point in this game, that's when the wheels can come off. This is a really good Ohio State team. And we also did see Indiana somewhat held in check finally when they faced a good defensive opponent in their last game. Now, they do have the bye week. That's another scheduling advantage for them coming in here. But that game against Michigan, just 20 points scored as a 2-touchdown favorite, only 40 rushing yards. They were held to 206 passing. Ohio State's metrics are just as good, if not better, than defensive numbers that Michigan has. And Ohio State's a much more explosive offensive team that can pull ahead and play ahead. I look for a substantial win by Ohio State here, and pretty ironic that we have 3 undefeated teams remaining in the playoff rankings, and 2 of them, Army and Indiana, are double-digit dogs this week, and I think this is one for good reason.
Indiana hit Michigan with 2 quick touchdowns, led 17-3. Then listen to this stat, Steve. In the second half, Indiana ran 25 offensive plays for 18 yards. Wow. Michigan caught up on defense and almost pulled off the victory. Also, just to be correct on the bowl eligibility, Washington just made it this past week at 6-5. So They would be the only Indiana opponent that have reached that status.
Pretty crazy, though, when you think about it, Mark, that they've played a Big Ten schedule and they haven't faced, Oregon, for example, or, Penn State, some of the other big name teams, which really puts it in perspective.
I think a lot of people across college football assume that Penn State is going to just cruise home at 11-1 and make the college football playoff, but they've got a tricky one here at Minnesota as just an 11.5-point favorite. And I say just as because we've had over 20 double-digit underdogs win games, and that surpasses last season total already. Steve's here, of course, to break down Penn State as an 11.5-point road dog at Minnesota, who's 6-4.
Interesting stat there about those dogs, Mark, because sports books have said, they've gotten crushed this year in the NFL the last couple months with so many favorites winning, a lot of the public teams doing well in the NFL. But what's made it palatable for them, they just told me this week on Wager Talk TV, is that the Saturday college football results have been very favorable with a lot of underdogs pulling upsets and whatnot, beating those favorites. So interesting stat there. And it's been the exact opposite this year, obviously, in the NFL, which has been very chalk heavy. My 10,000 game simulation on average has Penn State winning this by 10.5. So I do think the line is fair. 11.5 might be about a tick too high. And it's always a difficult trip here, to Minnesota late in the season. So, yeah, Penn State's got to be careful here. If they think they're just going to cruise and, make it to the playoffs and not have to do anything else here, they could be mistaken. And although I don't know if Minnesota could pull that outright upset as another double-digit dog, I do think they can probably keep it within single digits here. You look at the schedule also, they're at Wisconsin. That's a big rival game next Friday for them. But they're coming off the Rutgers loss, and they do have the bye. I think that's really the big difference here. Whenever I can take a home dog, somewhat of a live home dog late in the season with the bye, that can also make a difference. So it looks like a decent setup for Minnesota to perhaps keep this one close.
Steve's complete look at college football, the NFL, and Major League, the NBA, and college basketball, Major League Baseball over, Mark. Of course, at wagertalk.com. And the Under the Radar selection, that's exclusive to us right here at the Voice of College Football. You can catch that at patreon.com/MarkRogersTV or as a premium YouTube channel member. And Steve, you also have a special running right now that people want to take advantage of.
Yeah, I mean, Voice 25 is a great offer. It's a free best bet, instant $25 credit. Just log in, stevemerrillwagertalk.com, log in and use promo code Voice25 at checkout. You get a $25 credit. That's like getting a best bet for free right now at wagertalk.com.
Biggest game of the week in college football. It's arguable, but just the fact that it could be this BYU-Arizona State matchup, no one saw this one coming. BYU, a 2-7 team in the conference last year, and Arizona State, of course, coming off of back-to-back 3-9 campaigns, have come out of nowhere. Steve, line this one up for us. We got BYU coming off a huge loss against Kansas as a road slight favorite, and Arizona State just continues to surprise week to week. They pulled off an upset on the road against Kansas State last week.
Yeah, I think the real question is, does BYU let down here after finally losing a game? But the fact that they're in a big conference, it's not like they're an at-large, right, like Boise and these other squads. They do have a lot to play for still, but they're an overvalued team. In fact, the line is starting to move. Most of this week, this line was -3 across the board. We're now seeing 3.5 as we get closer to the weekend. My projection, my simulation, 10,000 games has Arizona State by 4.5. So at that previous line of -3 or less, there was probably a little bit of line value with them. The total is currently 49. I actually think the total might be the best play in this game, and I like the under 49. You look at both teams, they throw the ball for 7.9 yards per pass, both of them, very equal numbers. But then you start factoring in the opponents played, and you realize it's not quite as impressive as you would think. And that's something I'd love to do late in the season, is look at opponents' averages and then factor in strength of schedule. And when you do that in this game, you really see that both defenses hold the edge here. I project, normally just using all numbers this year, you get about a 50 as a fair total. So I think 49 is very fair. But then when you factor in the matchups, both passing offenses are going to be about a yard per pass attempt below average in this game, factoring in stronger pass defenses. So I like the under 49 here. I would have leaned Arizona State at 3 or less. Now that it's 3.5, I think the total is actually the safer play.
Texas A&M playing for a spot in the college football playoffs and possibly on the way to an SEC championship game appearance. Auburn playing for nothing. They've looked miserable all season. However, on the plains at night, that's why this spread is so close, Steve. We've got 2.5 on Texas A&M's side on the road against Auburn.
Yeah, it's interesting. They had a lot of look-ahead lines back at the Circa in Las Vegas way back in June for kind of games of the year, and this one was a pick'em when that came out. So pretty much in line, and right now we've got a 2.5-point spread. I actually think the line should be 2.5. My 10,000 game simulation, though, favors Auburn by 2.5 in this game. So I do think the wrong team is favored here, and there is some value with Auburn. The key is going to be if we get to that number of 3, which I don't think we will. This line has been holding steady pretty much all week at 2.5. So I would wait, maybe play Auburn at +3 if you can get that. It's a 7:30 Eastern late kickoff. But once again, I'm seeing mostly 2.5s as we head into the weekend. So not sure we're going to quite get to that key number of 3 by kickoff on Saturday night. But I like Auburn. I think they're an underrated team. Obviously, turnovers have been the problem this season, and it's been quite a problem for them. But at home, first of all, I think turnovers are a little less likely, and they can start cleaning things up a bit. And because of the turnovers, we do get value with what is just a 4-6 team on the surface. Mattel's pretty good numbers. They're averaging almost 9 yards per pass, 5 yards per rush, 6.7 yards per play. Normally you'd score more than 27.5 points a game. I think the yardage numbers are more indicative of how good this offense could be, and they're a live dog. In fact, I've got them winning this game outright on Saturday night.
College football is even more exciting with some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, But you can't miss Steve's weekly Under the Radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.